The next thing we're going to talk about is called the quick selection tool, making a quick selection. This is new, fairly new to me, fairly new to Photoshop, but it's really interesting how it works. We talked about the Magic Wand before, and this tool is located within the Magic Wand tool. You'll see it right there, called Quick Selection Tool. And what it lets you do, it lets you select something as if you were painting it in. So like if I click down here on this duck on his body and kind of drag my mouse, look what it did. It's adding the selection as I go and paint over the eyes, paint this in, and in just a matter of seconds, my object is selected. So one more time, doesn't matter where you start, I can click up here and look at grab his head, I can paint over his eyes, I'm holding my mouse down. Drag over the bill, drag over the neck, look at it, that's adding that in as I went, and amazingly you get your object selected. And it works off of brush size. I haven't shown you guys brush size yet because we haven't gotten down to these later tools yet, but basically what it means is, see up here at the top in the control panel, there's a black circle that says brush. I could click on that, and the little menu drops down, and I could change the diameter of this brush to make it larger or smaller. That's kind of the slow way to do it. What I like to do is, rather than going up there and clicking, I like to hit my bracket button. So the key's next to your P button on your keyboard. Right bracket makes the circle bigger, left bracket makes the circle smaller. In this case, it doesn't really matter what size it is, as long as it's kind of, as long as it's not too big, it's easy to make it work, or I can just paint the selection in. So it's called the Quick Selection Tool. Really nice. Now one thing I haven't mentioned yet, see a button out here to the right in the control panel? It's called Refine Edge. That button's been there on all these selection tools. Look, on the marquee, it was out here to the right. On the lasso tool, look, it's there again. I'm going to talk about it now that we're here on this quick selection, because here's what it lets you do. When you make a selection in Photoshop like this, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see the edge. See how the edge is a little bit ragged, a little choppy as it comes down around that curve? It's not real perfect. If you want to see what your selection looks like without it blinking like that, you can hide the blinking edge. It's called hiding a selection. It's still selected, but if I do Apple H, Command H on my keyboard, the blinking line goes away, but it is still selected. It's just a way for you to look at it and see kind of what your edge is going to look like. And can you see the way that edge is kind of choppy? So what this Refine Edge feature lets you do, I can click on this, and look what it immediately did, how it kind of softened the edge on that duck. It's a nice menu because while it's up, you can still zoom in and out on your screen. You can hold your space bar down and scroll around. You see how to create a softer, more kind of realistic looking edge there? Well, in this Refine Edge menu, there's some buttons across the bottom, and when it comes up, the one that's automatically chosen by default is this one here. It's called On White. It shows your image on a white background. There's one that shows your image on a black background. Um, there's one that shows your image with a mask in the background, which we'll learn about soon when we talk about the quick mask. There's one that shows your image as it looked when it was selected, so you can kind of see how it looked originally. If you don't remember, you can do Apple H to hide it. But if you click on the one on the white background, you can see how it kind of softened the edge and made it more realistic. And by the way, the button on the far right, this shows you your image as what we call a mask, where what you're looking at is white and what you're not looking at is black. We'll talk about that again later too. We'll learn all about masks. But Refine Edge, look how much nicer that is. Here it is before we refined it. Here it is after we refined it. And we can control the level of that refinement with these settings in this menu. I'll zoom in a little bit. Radius determines how many pixels around that edge are affected. Contrast, the higher the contrast, the sharper the edge will look. So that might have been too soft the way it originally did it for us. You could bump it up just a little bit so it wasn't quite as fuzzy around that edge. And smooth actually rounds out the selection some. Feather controls how soft it literally gets around the edge. So you can really control how that edge is refined. And you can expand the edge or contract it, make your duck even smaller. If you had some what we call artifacts showing up, this was on a red background, and you wanted to take that red background completely out, you want to select the duck without the red coming with it, we'd have to be real conscious of these artifacts, a little bit of red pixels hanging around the edge of our selection. As you can imagine, see a selection that's kind of choppy like that has the possibility of having some red on it. So if I contract it, see how it pulls it back inside the duck more and more, kind of as a safety net, to just in case, and we don't care if our duck gets a little narrower. Wouldn't hurt anything. See that? Some things, yeah, might look a little weird, but in this case it doesn't. So I love this Refine Edge menu. And a little later, I'll show you how to do this in a more kind of complicated way, the way we used to do it in Photoshop before this feature was made available. Okay.